Połowa listopada to tradycyjny początek festiwalu Pięć Smaków, czyli corocznego warszawskiego przeglądu kina azjatyckiego. Tegoroczny program obfitował w ekscytujące kino Hongkongu, pokrzepiające historie z Japonii, czy też arcydzieła Edwarda Yanga oraz masę nowości z całego kontynentu. Nam udało się porozmawiać z reżyserem jednej z produkcji prezentowanej w ramach wydarzenia, Ho Wi Dingiem, reżyserem filmu Terroryści, który opowiedział o swoich inspiracjach i procesie twórczym. Could you please explain to us what your movie is about?
Wow, this is hard. Should I take it? It's about 5 or 6 characters. They don't know each other, but because of an accident, you somehow linked them together. Most of them are teenagers, and I talk about, I'm trying to touch on the young people right now. Maybe in Taipei City, maybe in the world. Even though they are in the city full of people, in Taipei, it's a really crowded city. Even though you have so many people, so many convenient communication with cell phone and everything, they tend to be very lonely. I'm playing with the structure. It's kind of like a thriller. You see something happen, and then you slowly go back to see what happened. And oftentimes, people are fixed on one image, and then they can read something from the image. But for me, if you look at the image from a different perspective, with a different feeling, or maybe you know more story, and then you will have a different explanation about this film.
Okay, so you already mentioned the structure of your movie, and this structure really makes you think of Robert Altman's films and Alejandro González Iñárritu films. So I think, if I may ask, were those your inspirations for that kind of story structure? And what were other inspirations to tell a story in that way?
I did a film, my previous film called Cities of Last Things. It was also playing with chronology of films, of the structure. That film is like starting from the future and going backward, So I had a lot of fun doing that. And I often think of the news, like early morning when you read the news, it's always the consequences, it's a result, right? It's what happened. But for news, it's like, if this is a big news, they tend to go for like a week or 2-3 days or 4 days. And then when you follow the news, it's so, you slowly get the whole picture, because as the day progresses, more and more people find out what's going on in the past. So you suddenly have a new idea about what's going on with the news. With this film, it's kind of like you see the news, you see the result, and you will have a certain perception about the event. But as you slowly progress, and then you realize that it's not what you think. Yeah.
So now let's address the elephant in the room. I'm sure you get this question all the time, but your movie is called the same way as Edward Yang's classic. What was the reasoning behind it? Like, it's certainly not a remake or retelling of that story. So why did you decide to call back to that classic film?
Edward Yang is my favorite filmmaker in Taiwan. One of my favorites, because he deals with a lot of stories in urban setting. I love Ho Xiaoxian, but I cannot make movie like Ho Xiaoxian, and I cannot make movie like Chai Mingliang. But Edward Yang, I can kind of identify. I like the way he played with the structure also. I like the way he talk about the city, the people in the city. This story, I wrote it a long time ago when I was at NYU in New York. And I watch a lot of Taiwanese movies, but I was young. I couldn't, I haven't become a director yet. So after my previous film finished, I decided to go. I was looking for a new project, and I thought about this treatment. I thought maybe I can take it out and try, kind of rewrite again and make it happen. Many years ago in Taipei, there's a young guy going to the subway and start slashing people. and it happens. So I kind of use that story as part of my plot. At first, I wasn't sure about the title, and then at some point I thought about terrorizers. I like the way it sounds, because terrorizers is not the official proper English, and I like the sound of terrorize, and I like the sound of terrorizers, and I remember Edwardzie Yangu used it. I thought, why not? It's like maybe it's also about time to update what's going on right now, because what he did, it's like 20 years ago. So yeah, it's like a mixture of like homage and maybe also trying to comment on what's going on, because terrorize is plural, it's not singular, it's not one person. So yeah, I thought this might be very interesting. But well, I got some heat because of that. I didn't expect, but people often misunderstand and thought that this is a remake or this is something, and then they go and watch the film and watch my film and they try to compare it. So but I guess what's done is done, and also I still think it's it's a good homage to a great filmmaker. Yeah.
Okay, so you already mentioned that you studied at NYU, so a really prestigious film school in New York. In your experience, what are differences between how movies are made in America versus Taiwan, and what made you decide to actually go back there to pursue your career in filmmaking?
I was born in Malaysia, so after graduating from NYU, I thought that Malaysian doesn't have a strong filmmaking of film tradition, and I really want to go to Taiwan and meet those masters. So because it's a Chinese language country and I speak Mandarin, so it's okay for me to move over there. So I decided to go there to get closer to the masters, and yeah, so I spent my 20 years like over there. Taiwan it's how to say, it's when you make movie, it's basically you apply for grant, you got the grant, and you make it on time, like deliver, and it tend to be very low budget. So I think you can learn a lot from that. And then because it's not very well established, meaning that I'm the producer, writer, editor, and director. I own the company. I have to apply for the grant. I have to look for the money. So it's very independent way of doing things compared to Hollywood, because Hollywood everything is like division of labor. The director cannot do producing stuff. You got to have a union. So for me, this is a good way to learn the craft inside out, to make the film you want. Because when you make a film with low budget, you can do whatever you want. It's a vision you can try to keep. But if you make film in Hollywood, of course you are like supervised by a committee of people, executives, CEO, accountants, so of course everything will be different. But I'm not saying which way is good, which way is, none of it is it's the same. So I would love to go and make film in Hollywood, but for me this is a good trial to make film by yourself, like with without like enough resource. Yeah.
Okay, so now the last question. Taiwan is still somewhat of a mystery to us. Yes, because this retrospective of Edwardzie Yangu is really the first legal way to watch almost all of his movies on a big screen. So from that comes that we don't really know where to go next. Like, we know that this is a grandmaster, let's say, of that culture and that filmmaking world. But if someone loved his movies and wanted to go a bit further, like find out more about this cinema, what would you recommend? What are the next steps after Edwardzie Yangu to really appreciate Taiwanese cinema?
I mean, because I mentioned like two other names. One is Ho Xiaoxian. You probably heard of him. His style is very different from Edwardzie Yangu. He's more like visceral. It's more nostalgic. You know, it's more free. You know, it's more about feeling and less about narrative. Edwardzie Yangu is very Western for me because he writes script with a tight structure, but Ho Xiaoxian is basically, you know, it's very, he has long take, use emotional and the story based on his childhood, talk about things outside of the city. That is someone you can try to track down. And the third guy is Chai Ming-liang. Chai Ming-liang is famous because he's also from Malaysia. He made a lot of films also in city. If you check out his earlier films, try to check out his first 4 or 5 films, you also get a glimpse of what Taipei city like, but totally different from Edwardzie Yangu. His style is more personal, meaning that his film is very internal, very experimental, and yeah, it's something so different. I mean, 3 of them are totally different. And also Ang Lee from Taiwan, his first 3 films also take place in Taipei. Eat, Drink, Man and Woman, Pushing Hands, and I think Wedding Banquet is not happening in Taipei, but it's about like Taiwanese people. So this 3 film is also about Taipei. Yeah. So you everyone can check it out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for this interview. And your film is still available at the online edition of the festival, so everyone can check it out until 4th of December this year. So once again, thank you so much for this interview.